Hi, my name is Natalie Nixon. I am a creativity strategist and the president of Figure Eight Thinking, and I'm thrilled to be here with Design Milk, leading another DMTV Design Milkshake session. I've been asked to answer a few questions. The first question I've been asked to answer is, how can design archives inspire creativity? So I love this question because whenever we're talking about archives, we're talking about a documentation of past processes. And I'm the author also of a new book called The Creativity Leap, which is right here. And one of the things, I think it's a chapter in my book actually, I talk about how there's actually nothing new under the sun. And so when we revisit archives, it absolutely helps us to embrace the remix, to understand what has come before us, what's been done, and how we can tweak it, we can reinvent it based on our point of view, our perspective, our life experiences, our particular skill set that we are bringing to the fore. So love that question about design archives. Another question is, how are you thinking about the next 6 months? Presumably mid-pandemic, do you have a guiding principle? Or are you more surging forward or hanging back? Has the pandemic changed how you understand your own ambition? So a guiding principle for me is this idea of buoyancy. And back in March 2020, when the COVID-19 global health pandemic really became a reality for us in the United States, I started signing off all of my emails with stay buoyant, Natalie. And the reason why buoyancy is super relevant right now is because buoyancy conjures up this ability to relinquish control. I'm a swimmer, and one of the first things you learn when you're swimming in open water or any pool, lake, ocean, is that if you start to feel yourself getting tired, flip over on your back. And when we flip over on our backs, all of a sudden perspective shifts, right? We see the wide expanse of the sky. We stop churning. And so right now during COVID-19, this pandemic, it's very important for us to figure out how to be buoyant, how to relinquish control, how to be in flow state. And that's a rigorous process. It requires us to be mindful, to be grateful, and to always shift into getting perspective. So those are my thoughts on that question. Okay, next question is, how do you personally guard the boundary between what is work and what is personal? Or is that distinction now meaningless? Really important question. And on my website, Figure Eight Thinking, I have this PDF called The Value of the Pause, and it's about encouraging individuals and organizations to pause. As a creativity strategist, I help organizations and executive leadership teams apply creativity and foresight so they can get to more transformative business results. And part of the way I define creativity is that it's toggling between wonder and rigor to solve problems. So when this question is asking about boundaries, it's important to know when to step away from the laptop, when to pause, because we will burn out if we don't do that. One of the things that I do in my personal practice is I have daydream breaks. So I design in small, tiny amounts of time during the day, 90 seconds, 5 minutes if I can afford it, where I go outside, I sit on the front steps. I'm from Philly. We have a big front step culture. And I daydream. I allow myself to just look at the clouds passing by or to watch an ant crawl on the pavement. And it's always amazing to me how I come back to the work at hand fully recharged and energized. So my advice to create those boundaries is to be intentional about pausing and about resting. And we can do this as organizations by also creating boundaries about, Every Tuesday, we will only be available for Zoom meetings between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. You can start out inching out in this new way of working in baby steps. And people always say, well, the clients will be so upset if we're not available. Well, it's fascinating how when we create boundaries, actually others begin to fall in line. And actually, if they ask for our rationale, they may actually respect us more. Your employees absolutely will. Use that opening time, the beginning of the day or the end of the day, spend time with family, to go on a walk, to do heads down work. So rest is one way to go about that. And my last question that I'll answer is, do stressful times spur creativity or tamp it down? Are there certain characteristics or practices that can help us stay in the former zone? So during this time of COVID-19, it's certainly stressful. Different ones of us, you may be going through this. Friends, family are going through layoffs or going through furloughs. And that requires all sorts of stress, not to even mention if you're actually physically affected by COVID-19 and you're not well, if you're sick. But in times of stress, in more general terms, here's the thing about creativity. Creativity loves constraints, right? Creativity loves constraints on time. Creativity loves constraints on financial resources and money. And creativity loves constraints on people resources. So the good news is that actually during this time of constraint and kind of a pressure cooker feeling, it's actually when we come up with our best hacks, our most interesting new strategic partnerships, because we actually can now, through digital platforms, collaborate with someone in Johannesburg or in Seoul, South Korea. So despite the initial panic that we can have, it's important to, again, stay buoyant, zoom out, and understand that even with these constraints, it's through the constraint and through the stress of these times that we will do things we would have never thought to do before. And let me end with a personal example. As I mentioned, I'm the author of The Creativity Leap. It launched this June 2020. And my original idea for a book launch was I was going to rent the rooftop of the Free Library of Philadelphia. It's this iconic building on the Parkway in Philly and have a great little party. And that got completely nixed. So I had to practice what I preach. And instead, I reached out to people, acquaintances, friends, new colleagues, old colleagues, and I ended up with a much more dynamic, globally reaching book launch week that was full of Facebook Live and LinkedIn Live and Instagram Live conversations, collaborating around the ideas that I was poking around at in my book, The Creativity Leap. So I ended up doing an incredible conversation with Seth Godin, which is on his Akimbo podcast. I did a great conversation with John Maeda. He hosted me in a conversation that went on LinkedIn Live. And with Fei Wu, who's a digital media strategist, and Galit Ariel, who's an augmented reality expert based in Toronto. I would have never had those sorts of conversations and that sort of reach had I been comfortable in just having a book launch party on the rooftop of the library. So that's what I'm talking about. It's been great sharing this milkshake. Also, by the way, I've been pulling out all my questions from a mug that my friend Josh Owen gifted me. He's the director of the Vanelli Center at RIT in Rochester, New York. So I just wanted to mention that as well. Thank you, Design Milk, and I hope that this provokes some new ideas for you.